Hello everyone, welcome back to Laura Likes Books. I'm Laura and I like books. I'm really excited for this video and for this series in general. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite fiction books of all time. Since I really started reading again, I have given 71 books, fiction books, just general fiction, 5 stars. But I have painstakingly narrowed it down to my top 10. So without further ado, let's get into the books. These are not in any particular order. That would be way too hard. First book I want to talk about is The Wedding People by Alison Espach. We have this woman, Phoebe, who has gone to this place, Cornwall Inn. This wedding party has rented out the entire inn for their wedding. So anyway, she gets mistaken as part of this group, and she actually has gone there to end her own life. And so as she's contemplating this, she meets the bride of this wedding group. The bride, she kind of tells the bride what she's up to, why she's there. And this bride is like, no, you're not about to ruin my wedding with your nonsense. So they kind of create this weird friendship. And that's really all you need to know going in, but it was compulsively readable. I didn't want to put it down. I was fully invested. Now, mind you, the characters are not likable, particularly. They're all pretty flawed. They're all, not great, but it is a very rewarding read, in my opinion. Kind of in that same vein, we have The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. Sure. This one, I mean, where to even begin? First of all, the little top part in the jacket. Do you take this man? No. What about this one? It says, when Lauren returns home to her flat in London late one night, she is greeted at the door by her husband, Michael. There's only one problem. She's not married. She's never seen this man before in her life. But according to her friends, her much improved decor, and the photos on her phone, they've been together for years. As Lauren tries to puzzle out how she could be married to someone she can't remember meeting, Michael goes to the attic to change a light bulb and abruptly disappears. In his place, a new man emerges, and a new, slightly altered life reforms around her. Realizing that her attic is creating an infinite supply of husbands, Lauren confronts the question, if swapping lives is as easy as changing a light bulb, how do you know when you've taken the right path? She just keeps sending her husbands back up into the attic to get a new one. If I remember correctly, I think she sends one back because he's wearing a certain type of sandal or like something weird, something like that. And she just immediately is like, nope, get back up there. Like, doesn't even let him come fully in. I just this book was hilarious, but it also was deep and just insightful. I love books that take on that question of, paths not chosen, how your life could have ended up with different choices, like a sliding doors type situation. It's one of my favorite tropes. And yeah, I think it is just so clever. I honestly cannot say enough good things about this book. Next, I want to talk about my boy, Fredrik Backman. Don't mind my sticker that won't come off. Fredrik Backman is one of my all-time favorite authors, right up there with George Saunders. So this is really more of a favorite author, but in particular, I think my favorite thing from Fredrik Backman is his Beartown series. I think this is the 3rd book, The Winners. I don't have the first 2, but this series is about a small town. I think they've made a show. I can't remember. They made like a show or a movie about it. But anyway, it's this small town, and kind of the only thing they have going for them is hockey. And everyone in this town is invested in the hockey team. The story has many characters like POVs. There's some of the parents that we hear from, and then also some of these people's kids that are in high school together. In Beartown, the first book, something horrible happens at a party with these high school kids, and it kind of tears the town apart and threatens the hockey team and therefore the town. And so you get all these different perspectives, people's own agendas and vested interests in this event. And then, really all 3 books kind of tie that story up. The thing, I personally like hockey, but I'm not like super into hockey. That's not why I read these. It's more that Fredrik Backman writes people, I've said this before, he writes people like nobody else really out there is doing. He just understands human nature and human, I mean, he is a human, so I guess that makes sense, but the way he writes is just, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Read it and you'll understand what I'm talking about. We also have The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. This is a debut that came out in 2023. We are following our protagonist, Geeta. She lives in this small rural Indian village. And one day her husband disappears. He is not a very good person. She doesn't really care for him. And so when he leaves, she doesn't really care that much. However, being that this is a small gossipy village, it soon starts circulating that she has killed him. Geeta decides to let it ride. She realizes pretty quickly that because everyone in this town is believing she killed her husband, she's pretty much being left alone. Nobody really wants to come bother her or talk to her. And so she's like, you know what? Yeah, sure, I killed him. She views this as an opportunity to finally have some peace in her life. But then other women in the village start coming to her to get rid of their husbands, because they're like, oh, you killed your husband. My husband's a piece of shit too. Kill him for me, or help me kill him. What ensues is a story of female friendship, empowerment. It is hilarious, but also darkly comedic, I would say. It's kind of a thriller. There's even some horror elements. If you like a female friendship revenge plot, I would really recommend picking this one up. I don't own this book physically, but I do want to talk about 2 A.M. at the Cat's Pajamas by Marie-Helene Bertino. It makes me smile when I think about it. I read this book in, gosh, 2018, 2019 maybe. So bear with me because I do not remember a lot of it. We have this little girl, she's 9, and she is the funniest, most precocious kid. She smokes cigarettes and cusses, and I'm obviously not condoning a child smoking cigarettes, but she is doing it because her mother has just passed, and she is trying to find ways to be close to her mom. Her mom was a jazz singer, and so she wants to be a jazz singer. This book also, I forget what it's called, there's a word for it, but it's one of my favorite things where it takes place over one day. So her story is basically her trying to get to this jazz club in their town, so she can make her debut on stage. It also takes place on Christmas Eve, I think, which I absolutely love. And then we also have her teacher. I think she's in 5th grade, and her teacher is another POV that we get, and she's going to an event with her old high school crush. She's recently divorced, so there's that kind of side quest. And then the other perspective is the owner of the jazz club in town, who is worried that he's gonna have to close the entire club. It reminded me a lot of Empire Records, which is one of my favorite movies. It's very well contained, which is just one of my favorite things to read. It sounds kind of lighthearted, and it was very funny, but there was also a lot of heavy stuff, a lot of grief. That kind of marriage of those two vibes is one of my favorite things in books. Next, I want to talk about The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. This is another one who I've enjoyed everything from this author, but I think this is my favorite book by her so far. I'm trying to read through the synopsis because there's a trope in here that I don't want to spoil if it doesn't mention it. I'll just read it to you because it kind of hints but doesn't spoil. When Carly Sears, a young woman widowed by the Vietnam War, receives news that her unborn baby girl has a heart defect, she's devastated. It is 1970, and she is told that nothing can be done to help her child. But her brother-in-law, a physicist with a mysterious past, tells her that perhaps there is a way to save her baby. What he suggests is something that will shatter every preconceived notion Carly has, something that will require a kind of strength and courage she never knew existed, something that will require an unimaginable leap of faith on Carly's part, and all for the love of her unborn child. This book is so, I sobbed, gut-wrenching, but mostly it is about a mother's love for her child. And I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, mothers, children, babies, all of that. And to me, it has to be done right. I don't always enjoy it. It has to be done correctly. But in my opinion, this one just does it so well. A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Hotly debated book. There are people who despise this book with all of their being, and then there are people like me who sobbed, cried, threw up, just kidding, who were really affected by it. I will concede that this is basically trauma porn. Maybe some of it is written in a way to, like, for that purpose of upsetting the reader. However, for me, I feel that it was very effective. We have Jude, he is the main character. It's really about these 4 young men, but Jude really is the main character. He has been through unimaginable, horrendous trauma in his life. You can see how thick this book is. This entire book basically is Jude trying to move past his trauma and being re-traumatized repeatedly. It's very bleak. It's very hopeless. It's very, you're not getting a happy ending from this book. It's just, yep, that's what happened in his life. And I know I'm doing a horrible job selling it, but I will say, like, don't, like, look up trigger warnings, number 1. Number 2, I think don't go into this book if you're already struggling mentally. Like, I wouldn't have picked this up if I was going through it. You know, if I was going through something, I wouldn't necessarily read this at that time. But I just think this is one of the most beautiful, like I said, introspective, kind of not realistic. Well, it is kind of, actually. There are people who go through this and worse. I just think it's a good portrayal of trauma and what it does to a person and the cycle of trying to get better, trying to get out of that, wanting to accept help, but not being able to. There were many times during this book that I wanted to just strangle him and say, like, what are you doing? You know? And then I simultaneously wanted to just hug him and tell him it's okay. I'm getting teary-eyed, like, talking about it. I don't think this book is for everyone. However, I do think it is for a certain person who thinks they can gain something from it. But it's not it's not like a light read by any means. First of all, look at my copy of this. Gorgeous. Hello. This is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This is basically a retelling of David Copperfield, which I have not read, but I do know that it follows kind of the same plot beats. This is another protagonist that I highly related to. This says, many generations ago, Charles Dickens wrote David Copperfield from his experience as a survivor of institutional poverty and its damages to children in his society. Those problems have yet to be solved in ours. Dickens is not a prerequisite for readers of this novel, thank God, because I didn't read it, but he provided its inspiration. In transposing his epic novel to her own place and time, Kingsolver has enlisted his anger and compassion, and above all, his faith in the transformative powers of a good story. Demon Copperhead speaks for a new generation of lost boys and all those born into beautiful cursed places they can't imagine leaving behind. So he is born, he's the son of a teenage mother. His dad is dead. It says Demon braves the modern perils of foster care, child labor, derelict schools, athletic success, addiction, disastrous loves, and crushing losses. Through it all, he reckons with his own invisibility in a popular culture where even the superheroes have abandoned rural people in favor of cities. So yeah, it's just another bleak existence for this person. He has had a rough life. And it kind of just follows Demon through his childhood, his adolescence as an adult. I would say this one is a little more hopeful than A Little Life. But still very much a heavy book, not one to be read lightly. Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu. This book is really hard to explain. It is written like a screenplay for a TV show. Our protagonist is Willis Wu. He is an Asian American and he really feels like he has no agency over his life. He feels relegated to basically being an extra in the TV show that is his life and also the TV show that he is in. This book is extremely meta, extremely self-aware. Everything is written, you know, as a script, which I absolutely love when books do that. There is essentially a police procedural TV show that is being filmed. And Willis is trying to break out into a more main character. One thing that I loved about this is that even as Willis is constantly talking about being typecast as this generic Asian man, or, you know, basically the side character, he doesn't realize that the book realizes, the author, it is very intentional, but Willis does not realize that he is doing the same thing to the people around him, to his own parents, to his siblings. And ultimately, this book is just about the roles that we play, the roles we play in society, the roles we play in our own communities and our own families. Like I said, this book is very meta, so a scene will be happening where, you know, it's very much like dialogue in a show, right? And one of the characters, or Willis himself, will break the fourth wall, essentially. And like a character will start talking to Willis about something more in-depth or meaningful to his life. And that writing style I just found very clever and very effective. It is very fever dreamy. I don't know where my copy is right now, but there's another book called Flux by Jin-Woo Chang. That book is a lot more sci-fi, but it kind of is similar. It tells you, okay, we're inside this building and we pan to this person, a close-up of this person's face. Another thing I loved is that as Willis starts to attain his dream, he finds that he's even more relegated to these stereotypes, or people expecting him to behave in a certain way. I just think there is so much to love about this book, and I think something can be gained from reading it, regardless of what kind of books you typically read. I could not talk about my favorites without talking about George Saunders. We have Lincoln, you know, Abraham Lincoln, and his son Willie is dying. Every time I try to describe this book, I hit a block mentally, because like there's no explaining it. We basically have all of these different people giving their version of what's happening at any given time. There are people like ghosts who are surrounding Willie, trying to like shepherd him into the afterlife, and they're all like talking over each other and like contradicting each other and just saying stuff. And then we also have people that are alive, like the people still living that are on the estate, and they're kind of giving a perspective on what's happening there. For instance, I think they're talking about Lincoln, like Abraham Lincoln here, what he looked like. And in Personal Recollections of Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War by James Gilmore, it says, the nose heavy and somewhat Roman, the cheeks thin and furrowed, the skin bronzed, the lips full, the mouth wide. And then the next line, his eyes dark gray, clear, very expressive, and varying with every mood. That's from The Life of Abraham Lincoln by Isaac Arnold. Then the next line, his eyes were bright, keen, and a luminous gray color. That's from a different book. Gray brown eyes sunken under thick eyebrows, and as though encircled by deep and dark wrinkles. Yet another one, his eyes were a bluish brown. His eyes were bluish gray in color, always in deep shadow, however, from the upper lids, which were unusually heavy. Kind blue eyes, over which the lids half drooped. I would say that the eyes of President Lincoln were of the bluish gray, or rather grayish blue, for, without being positive, the blue ray was always visible. The saddest eyes of any human being I've ever seen. None of his pictures do him the slightest justice. I feel like I can't, like my words are not adequate to describe why I find that so funny or so like clever and entertaining, because it just sounds like a lot of nonsense. But if you put it in the context of the entire story, it comes together. Maybe that's what it is it's like a bunch of puzzle pieces that are all laid out completely out of order, or like completely seemingly not connected. And then at the end, when all of the puzzle pieces are put together, you like finally see how beautiful it is. I don't know, I just love George Saunders, and I get that his writing isn't for everyone, but I am just obsessed with him and the person he is and the writing that he does, and I hope he never ever ever stops. And that is gonna do it for my top 10 fiction books of all time. Please let me know if there's any genres that you are interested in me talking about. I think next time I might do horror or mystery or fantasy. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye.